before talking to anybody else, you need to first figure out how you're talking to yourself and make that into a healthier conversation and dialogue. Instead of saying, I'm personally so overwhelmed, all they're hearing is, you're not competent, you can't get it done. Instead, you want to turn it into a professional concern.
That's Erin McGoff, also known as @AdviceWithErin. She's known as the internet's big sister, and she shares candid career and life advice to her 6 million plus followers across social media. She's also the best-selling author of The Secret Language of Work, hyper helpful scripts for every situation, which we're discussing today. So you'll learn 1, how to get a raise with just a few words, 2, how to set boundaries like a pro, and 3, the one phrase to stop using at work. And if you want a quick summary write-up of the actionable wisdom that Erin shares, I recommend you sign up for our free Gold Nugget email newsletter found at awesomeatyourjob.com. I'm Pete Mockaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Erin. Erin, welcome.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I am happy to have you here talking about the secret language of work and more. So, wow, you have quite the impressive audience, 6 million plus followers across everything. Could you maybe kick us off by sharing what's a piece of advice you've offered that's been counterintuitive, such that folks are like, no way, but you just staunchly believe, no, this is in fact the way?
Oh, I don't know. Small talk comes to mind. You know, people tend to kind of hate and downplay small talk, thinking that it's just something that's not for introverts. But I always urge people to know the difference between being shy and being introverted, and to understand that small talk is as old as humans are themselves, and that it's a really, really important thing to master in order to develop rapport with people. So sometimes people are a little surprised, as an introvert myself, that I'm so pro small talk, but it really is a very, very important thing to master.
Well, tell us, make the case. Why is small talk important if it's just small?
Yeah, right. I talk about this in my book, about how small talk is not really about the conversation. It's about signaling to the other person that you're not a threat to them. And this goes back to our caveman days. Like, if a person from another tribe try to come in to your village, small talk is the way of you both communicating that you're not a threat to each other. And I think it's still that way today when we go into work. Being able to maximize those first few minutes of a Zoom call with a client when you're still waiting for your boss to get on, that's like a really golden time for you to showcase your professionalism and your maturity and how capable and competent you are. And a lot of people think, oh, well, small talk is just so cringy and I'm just so much deeper than that. But you need to just get out of that mindset, because it really doesn't do you any favors. So that's kind of like generally my advice, is just to get out of mindsets that aren't doing you any favors and get into mindsets that are.
Yeah. I don't know who said it. Probably one of our guests. We'll dig into the archives. Small talk leads to big talk. And I think it's so true, because if you went right for big talk, because I don't know, I'm in that ballpark too. It's like, I don't care about the weather. It's, what are we doing? It feels like almost silly and performative. And yet, if the opening question was like, so Pete, what's the deepest fear you're wrestling with right now? Like, what? Who are you? Why would I tell you that out of the gate? So it's sort of like there needs to be some kind of a bridge or stairway between just meeting or silence and the really deep stuff that turns into a strong relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I love that small talk turns into big talk. I think that's very, very true.
Well, and you've got some hyper helpful scripts for us in that situation, and dare your subtitle promise, every situation. So could you share with us, what's the big idea with your book, The Secret Language of Work?
Yeah. So The Secret Language of Work was really birthed out of what my content is. I started posting career advice online in 2021, and it was mainly script-based. I was helping people actually figure out the exact words to say in situations, or at least giving them examples for inspiration. I always was kind of frustrated with a lot of career advice. It felt very vague to me. Speak to your strengths, walk in your truth. And I'm like, what does that sound like though? I need examples. So I really wanted to write a book that democratized access to really high quality soft career advice. And not only did that, but also gave people hyper helpful, like very, very helpful scripts and examples of what to say in certain scenarios, how exactly to network, without being cringy, or how to negotiate without accidentally being rude. Because a lot of us, we want to do things. We want to ask for a raise. The only thing that's actually holding us back is the fear of coming off offensive, or the fear of failure. lots of fears. So I wanted to write a book that was designed to supercharge people's confidence by giving them the tools and the scripts to actually speak what they want into existence.
Oh, cool. Well, we love supercharging confidence over here. So we're in the right place. This is good news. Well, could you share with us perhaps a story of someone who was kind of bumbling and unaware of the secret language of work, but then picked it up and what kind of results that unlocked for them?
Just yesterday, I got a DM from a man, Eduardo, and he got a dream offer. And he really didn't want to rock the boat. He had never negotiated his salary before, but he did think that he was worth a little more. And he was, he grew up in a household where his parents had never negotiated. And that financial literacy aspect wasn't something that he was inherently taught. And he said, I read your book. I read the chapter. I'm going to go in and I'm going to try it. And he updated me this morning that he was able to negotiate a 10% increase. And that was just probably 3 minutes of using mouth sounds. Yeah. And it made cash appear instantly. And so that's the power I want people to understand is if you can just use your mouth sounds right, you can make cash appear out of thin air. So I have tons of stories. Yeah.
Mouth sounds. Well, yeah, that's in a way, that's kind of silly and flippant, but another way, it's very accurate. Because I think we can overthink it, right? In terms of like, oh my God, I have to say just the right things. But then if I say this, he might say that. But if I say this, but you're like, you know what? They're mouth sounds.
They're mouth sounds.
They're words. And it's like, no need to get all worked up about them. But almost like sort of this, the magic words for a genie or something. So, since we're on this example, what are the mouth sounds or the magic words for, I'd like you to pay me 10% more?
Yeah, well, every negotiation is unique. It's all going to be a case-by-case basis and all of that. And that was something that always annoyed me when I would get career advice is people would say, oh, well, it depends. And it's like, just give me an example. Just give me, some inspiration. And so that's really what I try to do in the book. And it's so important to stay aligned on your shared goal. The recruiter or whoever's negotiating the deal with you, they want to hire you. They have an incentive because their job is to get somebody in the role. The company needs somebody to do a job. You can do the job. They offered it to you. So don't be scared. In the United States culture, negotiating your salary is a given. It's what they expect. They rarely give you the best offer or the highest offer they can. And if they do, they oftentimes will say, this is the highest offer, by the way. Like we can't go any higher.
Yeah. Or this is standardized across all of North America. Yeah. It's kind of what it is,
Yeah, exactly. So it's always important to come in with a case. 3 things. And AI can also be helpful too if you're struggling to think about I don't know, the 3 extra reasons. Just it's helpful to try and figure out what you bring to the table that maybe somebody else doesn't. I always say it's kind of like if you're looking at 2 pairs of jeans and everybody says, oh, they're just going to go with the cheaper candidate. And it's like, do you just always go with the cheaper jeans? No, you go with the jeans that look the best on you and they're the highest quality and they're the best value for what you're getting. So it's kind of important to productize yourself, which sounds odd, but to go to them and say, hey, I really want to make this work. I want to sign this paperwork today. In order to do that, here's the salary that I'm looking for. And here are the 3 reasons why I bring this additional value to the role. So it's really important to remember that I always say it's not personal. It's just professional. This is just a business transaction. You're going to provide a service to them and they're going to pay you. And a mindset shift that people find really helpful is I like to think about myself as like a vendor or a freelancer. And I'm not necessarily like begging for this job, but rather I bring a certain specialty and skill set to the company and I'm going to alleviate problems and I'm going to use my professional skill to improve the company and to provide value. And they're going to pay you. And so you're just negotiating what this proper rate is. Everything's made up. The salaries are changing all the time. Do your research, but also make sure that you are getting paid what you think that you're worth. And you'd be surprised how well a negotiation can work. It's just a few minutes of awkwardness for, like I said, cold hard cash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that was a hyper helpful script in terms of, I want to sign this paperwork today. And here's really what, would do the trick for me. As I'm hearing it, it doesn't feel rude. It's funny. As I'm putting myself in the role of the recruiter there, it's like, I'm excited. Oh, she wants to sign today. Good news. And I'm already predisposed to want to be able to say yes. And then I'll probably either give it to you if I can, or you just be really clear about why I can't. But I think that's a good feeling to know that you explored that rock. Okay, well, I tried, and this is, I believe them when they said that's the highest they can go. That's cool. Okay.
Yeah, and there are other things you can always negotiate besides salary too. If they can't go higher in salary, maybe they can do a higher 401k match or more PTO days or remote flexible Fridays. So it's just always important to just see what you can get.
Yeah, that's very nice. Well, so we're going to maybe dig into all kinds of little hyper helpful scripts in particular situations. But I'd love to know, are there a few of your favorites, go-tos, like, oh, this is a handy script that is useful in many situations?
Something that I help people with a lot is setting boundaries, which is, it's tough, when you're working, and especially in an economy like this, where it's really an employer's market, you don't want to rock the boat. At the same time, it's really important to set boundaries for yourself. It's not other people's responsibility to set your boundaries. People will generally take what they can get from you. So it's important to show people what they can expect from you and what they can't expect from you. So it's important to learn how to say no in professional ways. And something I love is, oh, I'm currently at capacity. So let me give you an example. So say your boss is just throwing things on your plate. Instead of getting bitter and frustrated at your boss, oh, why don't they understand that they're overloading me? They're stressing me out. I'm drowning as it is. First of all, give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Your boss's job isn't to micromanage everything you do. They're not inside your brain. Their job is to do your job, and your job is to do your job. So you have to communicate with them. And so let's say they put yet another thing on your plate and you're like, I can't do this. Instead of going to your boss and saying, I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed out, I can't do this all. That's just giving them another problem. And every manager hates that. Instead, you always want to come to your boss with solutions. So you want to say, hey, I noticed that you gave me another task today. I currently focus on this task. Which would you like me to prioritize? And then you're giving them, which client is more important? Which one can we shift? Which one can we move to Monday? You're giving them something to work with. So saying, I'm currently at capacity with client A's presentation. I know that you want me to focus on client B. Which one would you like me to prioritize today? And which one would you like me to postpone to Monday? And that way, that is like music to a manager's ears, because then they have something to work with. And they're not just dealing with your stress and your problems, but you're providing them a potential solution.
Well, and that, it sounds very nice when you say it. Good job. I guess my nightmare, or we talk about fear at the beginning, is I always fear a response that's very curt or mean, along the lines of like, well, Erin, we expect you to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time here. It's like, well, hey, Erin, actually, both of those are critical. So make them both happen and don't whine to me about this. So anyway, I feel like that's a bit more edgy than the vast majority of managers will communicate, but they may well convey something along those lines in a more diplomatic, professional way. So what do you think about that in terms of, one, can you deflate my fears? Like that happens almost never. Or two, do you have the follow-up for when they're pushing back on your pushback?
Yes, absolutely. This is something that people actually like about my videos, is that I always offer a pushback. I actually just posted this or filmed a video about this today. Because on the internet, in a video, a perfect script is going to get the job done. But in reality, when you're working with a difficult boss who does tell you, hey, I need you to prioritize both, that does happen. And obviously, I recommend that you don't work with a boss like that, but we can't always control who we work for. We can't just quit our jobs so we don't like our boss. We're going to have to work with people that we don't like constantly. So if your boss does push back, again, don't make it personal, keep it professional. I always recommend when people are coming to their boss with like a complaint or an issue, that they reframe a personal problem as a professional concern. So instead of saying, I'm personally so overwhelmed, all they're hearing is, you're not competent, you can't get it done. A bad boss, a good boss will work with you, but a bad boss is just hearing they're not competent. Instead, you want to turn it into a professional concern. Hey, I know client A is a really, really important client, and I really want to make sure that we get this report done right and on time. I have this much capacity today, and I want to make sure that we have time for both. So can you work with me to figure out a solution here to make sure that we can get both reports out the door? Again, align your goals. Always be aligning your goals. The boss wants the reports out the door. You also want the reports out the door, but it's impossible right now to get that done as is. So you want to come to them and say, our goals are aligned here, but the strategies, the car is broken down. It's not going to work. And then present them with a solution. James has a lighter workload today. Would you mind if I gave him the remainder of project A so I could just focus on project B, and maybe give them like a worse second option or something like that? Just give them options.
Or I could just have AI generate it entirely.
Gosh, really?
No, don't do that.
Don't do that. And you can relieve that mental load from your boss and actually get what you want. So that's the secret language of work. The first page in my book, I talk about the desired outcome. So is your desired outcome from this conversation your boss understanding that you're stressed? No, your desired outcome is working on one thing at a time.
Yeah.
So always keep the first thing, and keep those goals aligned.
Yeah. Well, if I may, we'll keep the pushback going in terms of, it's like, well, Erin, I think that both of these are possible so long as you just crank at it till midnight. What's the problem?
I could certainly crank it out until midnight, but that doesn't solve the problem of these reports being done on time and with quality. Unfortunately, I'm only one person, and we do need two people on this, or we need to rework the deadline. It's not possible. People are oftentimes tempted to say, well, why stop work at 5? It sounds great in an internet video. Sounds awesome. Stick it to the man. Those videos always go viral, but it doesn't work in real life. So I try to give very realistic advice. And again, it always goes back to that desired outcome, aligning your goals and talking about workflows and solutions. And yes, when it does come to time-based activities, that can be really tricky. If your boss is just you need to stay late, remember that that's not a sustainable solution. So sometimes, you might need to stay late at work. You might need to get something done. I'm very pro working hard. I'm not anti working hard. I think people should prove themselves at work, but I also believe in working smart. And working a long time doesn't necessarily mean that you're working hard or working smart. It just means that you're working a long time. So it's always important to collaborate with your boss. I like to have things in writing too, send them an email and be like, these are all the things that need to get done in the next 12 hours. Even if I stay working until midnight, that's not going to happen. So again, just working with them, keeping it positive, keeping it solution oriented.
Well, yeah. And I like that frame associated with it. And you didn't say it explicitly, but what I'm hearing, and maybe you could highlight it explicitly, is the notion that quality is likely to suffer if you are cranking at it at 9, 10, 11 p.m. And I think that we can all just appreciate that is true of the human biological entity straight up. That just is.
Yeah, it's important to remember your boss wants to look good to their boss. And you messing up a client report because you ran out of time, that doesn't make them look good to their boss. So always think about what they're looking for and how you can align your goals.
And I think even to that notion of the sustainability and highlighting the burnout or sustainability piece, I think it really does give rise to all kinds of other creative solutions. It's okay, maybe you can work until midnight and then you're going to go ahead and take tomorrow off. And that's reasonable. And that there are times when that is 100% cool with the manager. Yeah, please go for it. And you have the chat, you got a win-win there.
Yeah, I mean, you can't fix a bad manager. The only solution is to get away. People don't change. You just have to get away from them. But you're totally right. That's another solution that you could offer. Hey, yeah, I could stay until 2 a.m. tonight, get it out the door. I'm willing to put in that extra work because I have this goal of becoming a director in 12 months. Always remind them of what your goal is. Speak it into existence. It's something I talk about. I'm willing to put in this extra effort because I want this goal or promotion. However, I'd really appreciate being able to come in at noon tomorrow as a way of catching up on sleep, something like that. Always offer different solutions.
Yeah, framing it in terms of the goal, the objective, what they want is fabulous. One of my favorite quotes, don't know where it came from, was, "Diplomacy is the art of letting other people have it your way." I was I think that's kind of what we're doing here is you're always speaking about it in the terms that they care about.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Well, so we talked about some favorite words. How about some least favorite words? Anything you think just needs to go?
Yeah, as far as phrases to remove from your vocabulary, there's always the fillers, which I intentionally use, by the way, just in the book, I talk about them as language softeners, because as a woman, if I tend to speak the way I feel most comfortable, which is more blunt and plain, people tend to not like me very much. So I use fillers intentionally, which people are always really interested to hear about, because I'm probably one of the only communication experts out there that is not telling you to tone it down. Now, some people certainly need to tone it down, but I'm not a hater of fillers in general, especially in conversations like this. You don't want to sound too robotic. But a phrase that I think is really helpful to get rid of in a professional and personal setting is the phrase, "I don't have time." Boss, I didn't have time to do this. I don't have time for that. People just really don't like hearing that you don't have time. And it's also not helpful to you, because there's no such thing as not having time for something. There's not making it a priority. And you can't make everything a priority. And that's just that. And this is really, really helpful for people on an individual level, because When you say, I don't have time, you're taking your power away from yourself. You're saying, I'm not in the driver's seat of my own life. I don't have time for anything. I'm flustered. I'm flailing. I'm all over the place. But when you say, I don't have the ability to make this a priority right now, you're putting yourself back in a place of power. And you're saying, I have control over my life. I can control over my days. I'm not in a position to make this a priority right now. And maybe that's updating your portfolio or cooking homemade meals. It's totally fine if sometimes you don't have the ability to make everything a priority. So I'm really a fan of using language that empowers yourself, even when it's way more fun sometimes to use language that disempowers yourself and lets you be a victim. I'm typically a fan of putting yourself back in the driver's seat, even when it's hard.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't have time is false fundamentally. I guess it's almost like the phrase I have to or you have to. It's like it's incomplete and on its own false, but it means I don't have time relative to, I don't have time to do this in addition to the things that I'm super duper committed to and unwilling to give up, or which is the same thing as saying it's not a priority. And likewise, I have to or you have to is false on its own, but is only true in some context. You have to do this in order to achieve a particular result subject to some particular, constraints and commitments. So, but that's a lot of words.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, tell us any other super favorite transformational language shifts that we got to highlight here.
One of the things that I talk about in the book, kind of like these basic fundamental idea, is strategic communication is all about playing chess and not checkers. So going back to the idea of emotional regulation, there are things that you'll want to say in the moment, things that your gut is telling you to say, that you feel compelled to say. It's impulsive. And a lot of the times it's really true and really right. And you're like totally fine for saying that. Like, boss, you suck. Like, your boss might suck. I totally agree. However, it's always important to remember what your goals are. So a great example is when you're quitting your job. A lot of people, especially if you've been working for a bad boss, which is unfortunate, want to tell off their boss. And it totally makes sense that you want to tell off your boss. That's what you do in your personal life. If somebody's being rude to you or disrespecting you, it makes sense. There is a way to do this, though, that stings so much more and protects you from the negative repercussions. And that's playing chess and not checkers. So playing checkers would be, I'm quitting. You're the worst boss ever. I hate working here. You suck. I hope I never see you again. Hey, that's all true, fine and dandy. That's all power to you. You're expressing your emotions. Doesn't benefit you, because 5 minutes after you walk out of their office, that stink will follow you. And you'd be surprised how small the world is. And I'm not saying that you need to get your boss to love you, but I'm saying that there's a professional way to leave your job. You can say, hey, I'm putting in my 2 weeks today. Thank you so much for my time here. I would love to provide feedback if possible. If not, that's fine. But, April 6th will be my last day. Just keep it short and sweet. And then you can provide professional feedback, whether that's to HR or in an exit interview. And that is so much more painful and effective because you're doing it in a professional way. So they're not getting distracted by your personal emotions, but rather it's professional feedback. And you can go to Glassdoor and you can scream in a pillow and go to kickboxing classes and get it out in a healthy way. I always recommend getting out your emotions in a healthy way and expressing them, but do it in a way that benefits you and doesn't accidentally backfire and hurt you down the line. And so the book is very, very much about how can you strategically use your words to get what you want, maybe in a way that seems counterintuitive at first, but over the course of time will pay off.
Yeah, I think that's a nice distinction there. It's like you're a human being who has emotions, and those emotions have validity. And it is often helpful and beneficial to have those emotions expressed somehow.
Yes.
And yet, often in the workplace about the thing that you're mad about is not quite what's going to give you the optimal result.
Exactly. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Okay. Well, do you have any final pro tips on sounding more confident?
Yes. Something I talk about a lot is this idea of the person that you talk to the most is actually yourself. So a lot of people focus on external communication. How can I communicate better with my coworkers and my boss and recruiters and all this stuff? And that's great. But none of it really sticks the landing unless you already have a good relationship with yourself. So the person that we talk to most is ourselves. So the way that you talk to yourself really matters. And we all tend to have this internal dialogue that's hypercritical, not very positive, and it takes work to kind of train yourself out of that. And so something I always say is to be your own best friend. Next time you mess up at work and you say, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. I'm always messing things up. I don't deserve to be here. Everybody's going to figure out I'm such a fraud and a failure. Pretend your friend is saying that. And how would you respond to them? You'd say, you're not a failure. You're not an imposter. You messed up a spreadsheet. It's really not a big deal. Just go in and fix it. Let your boss know and move on with your day. Like, kind of get used to like talking to yourself inside your head. It sounds neurotic and nuts, but once you get in the habit of doing it, you become very, very kind to yourself, but you also become stronger because you're able to deal with obstacles and issues and challenges much better. You're able to overcome things much, much quicker. So before talking to anybody else, this is how I open up the book, is you need to first figure out how you're talking to yourself and make that into a healthier conversation and dialogue. And it takes a little bit of work at first, but over the course of time, it becomes much, much easier. And then you treat others how we tend to treat ourselves. So you tend to treat others with more kindness and empathy and dignity. And that gets you so far. I always say, like, manners go so far. You'd be shocked at how many people come into an interview and don't even say thank you at the end. I don't know if it's because they were never trained to, or because they're entitled, or maybe they just forgot. That happens too. But just saying thank you, please. I really appreciate that. Like, just these little tiny things can go so, so, so far. So the devil is really in the details. But yeah, my overarching advice is that if you're looking to improve your communication with other people, first improve your communication with yourself.
And I like that a lot. Well, we talk about the golden rule, fundamentally. Treat others the way you'd like to be treated in terms of like how are you treating yourself? And so it's often the case that we are much more vicious to ourselves than we would ever be to a third party. And I'm right with you. I felt that recently, actually. I've had some conversations with myself in terms of like, maybe I'm disappointed that I wasn't able to take care of business, in a couple of days. But to be able to say, hey, you know what, Pete, it's been a pretty hard couple of weeks here. They cut down my beautiful forest view to make a new house, which is not fun. I'm listening to the beep, beep, beep of the construction machines. I'm sick, like so a number of things. And so it's like, it's kind of makes sense that it's not your most uber productive day in the record books, given the context you find yourself in. And so in a way, it feels silly to speak to yourself in that way. And yet it's very soothing. It's almost like a sweet motherly word of encouragement to your 4-year-old self. And I was like, you know what? That's right. Okay.
Yeah, you're right.
Tomorrow's another day. It's all good. So any pro tips on if we're feeling some awkwardness there, or we're not accustomed to engaging ourselves in this sort of a kind conversation? How do we kind of get more in that groove?
That's a really great question, because it's actually a lot harder than people realize. It's hard to catch yourself in the moment when you're in this 24/7 habit of being so self-critical and so hard on yourself. So I recommend this proactive approach where every morning when you're brushing your teeth, just look in the mirror and be like, just think, I'm going to have a great day. Like, I'm really good at my job. Like, people like me. People like working with me. Those affirmations sound really silly. And a lot of people would kind of, roll their eyes at that and scoff. However, they're really effective on a neurological basis. And I think if you can just look in the mirror, say 3 things, I'm going to have a good day. People love working with me. I'm going to crush this project. Like, you can get specific about it too. It will turn into a habit.
Yeah.
Just slowly over time. And at first it'll feel really weird. Sometimes when I encourage people to do that, they say, I'm not doing that. And it makes me really sad, because in that moment, I'm like, oh my gosh, you are so mean to yourself that you can't even be nice to yourself for 5 seconds. And it's very, very sad to me. And I just say, what happened to you where you feel like you can't be kind to yourself? It's tough. People grow up in really rough households and really rough childhoods. And they learn that the only way to survive is to hate themselves. And so things can get pretty deep pretty quick sometimes.
Well, yeah, you're right. Well, and what happened to you? I'm thinking about the book that Oprah co-wrote there, which was a good one. And it's intriguing. It's sort of not that, speaking from my own experience, it's not that we're incapable of that. Like, yeah, I can say the words in the mirror. Sure. It's just that I feel kind of weird and silly and awkward doing so. And what's interesting about that is, well, one, I think that's the case for all conversation. Is like, well, if you've never done it before, everything feels weird and silly and awkward the first time you do it, just straight up as a fact of learning and how that works. But secondly, I find it encouraging that the affirmations you spoke, we had Hal Elrod on the show talking about, make your affirmations truthful in terms of like money flows to me effortlessly. It's like, well, no, it really doesn't actually. I really have to hustle. So I think one of my latest affirmations, which I find it's really true. And I actually assembled evidence for it. I wrote it down because sometimes I can get in like a negative loop, is that, and this is just objectively true, sometimes things work out better than you expect.
Yep. What's the best that could happen?
Yeah. Because, sometimes I was like, oh, it's going to be a lot of effort. It's not even going to turn into anything anyway. I don't feel like it. I don't want to bother, blah. It was like, okay, yeah, maybe. But also what is true is sometimes things work out better than you expect. And hey, what do you know? I've written down a dozen examples and I found that quite encouraging lately. So I think that's kind of the sweet spot for affirmations. It's not was it Gordon Smiley or I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me, but rather, hey, here's something that is true. And when I bring that back to the forefront of my awareness, it provides encouragement.
Yeah, I love that realistic approach so much. I have a big day today. I have a big calendar. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. And I think that I'm really capable of getting this done. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Tim Ferriss. We've all heard of goal setting when you set goals for your life. And he has this whole idea where you practice fear setting. So you actually write out all of your biggest fears. So if you try to start your own company, what's the worst that can happen? And then you work your way backwards from there to be like, okay, well, I go into debt. And then you talk about how you would rectify the situation. And I think that that's really effective. And I think that if you can just work through it and be really realistic with yourself, I had this big presentation today. I think it's going to go great because I'm super capable. And if it doesn't, here's what I'm going to do. I think that's really, really effective. I like to give as realistic of advice as possible. So I really enjoyed what you said.
Big thanks to Erin for sharing her wisdom with us. Big thanks to our sponsors. Check them out. One sponsor to check out is Shopify. When you're starting something new, what ifs abound? What if I fail? What if nobody cares? What if nobody buys my stuff? Shopify can help make things easy. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S., from household names like Magic Spoon and Allbirds to brands just getting started. Shopify facilitates everything from inventory to payments to analytics and more. No need to use a dozen different software tools. Everything's all in one place, making your life easier and your operations smoother. And what if you get stuck? Well, Shopify is always around to share advice with their award-winning 24/7 customer support. You can get started with your own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand style. It's time to turn those what-ifs into ka-ching with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/awesomepod. Go to shopify.com/awesomepod. That's shopify.com/awesomepod. Ka-ching.
Ever notice how life's best stories don't happen in your living room? They happen on the open road, out on the water, or parked under the stars. At Progressive, they get that you want to focus on the experience, not worry about the what-ifs. That's why they offer quality insurance designed for your ride, whether that's a boat, RV, or motorcycle. Adventure with confidence. Visit Progressive.com and see how easy it is to protect your favorite way to get away. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in D.C. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Truckers aren't just moving goods. They're making sure bakers get their chocolate chips and hotels get their tiny soaps. But truckers can't do this if they're not on the road. That's why Progressive has over 360 heavy truck employees to help truckers stay on time and on track. Quote truck insurance today in as little as 8 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Oh, thank you. Well, now let's hear a rapid fire about some of your favorite things. Could we hear about a favorite quote?
Yeah, I was just thinking, don't get mad, get curious. I don't always say that. I usually say my favorite piece of career advice. But from our conversation today, I think that's something that these listeners might need to hear is just, when you're feeling angry at work, don't get mad, get curious. How did we end up here? What happened in my boss's childhood that's making them act this way?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a good general rule of thumb.
Yeah. And a favorite study or experiment or bit of research?
So I think it was in the 1990s. There was a study that found a phenomenon called the liking gap. And it talks about how they found that when people exit a conversation, the people who you left, the group you left, tend to rate you way more favorably than you think it went. Like consistently across the board, people actually tend to like you more than you think that they liked you. And I encourage anybody listening, go read the study, go watch a YouTube video about it. I think it's absolutely fascinating because there are a lot of interesting studies out there, but I don't hear people talk about the liking gap very often. And it can be very, very validating if you're somebody who's socially anxious.
Yeah. And a favorite book?
I used to say The Alchemist.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of people say The Alchemist though. So I am going to also say Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. If you've never, I feel like everybody kind of, loves that book now, but it is truly the Bible on negotiating. And I think Chris is a great reader on the audiobook. He gives great stories. I think it's just a well-structured and well-written book.
He is a great reader on the audiobook. He was on the show. And just the way he says, salsa red pearl. It's like, I gotta have that truck. It's like, I think about, whenever I see a red truck, I think of Chris Voss. I mean, he makes an impression.
Yes, he does.
And a favorite tool, something you use to be awesome at your job.
Oh, I'm using a lot of tools now. I'm, of course, using Claude Cowork. I absolutely love Claude Cowork. I think when you learn how to prompt things correctly, it's very helpful. Where people run into issues with AI is that they don't put in the effort to learn how to prompt correctly. So if anybody's listening to this, watch some YouTube videos, learn how to improve your prompts, and you would be shocked at what a great sidekick something like Claude Cowork can be.
Mm-hmm. And a favorite habit?
I drink a ton of water every morning. I'm not even kidding. I think drinking water is like a really great piece of career advice. Like people in the afternoon, they think they need that second cup of coffee, that 2 p.m. coffee. You don't. You're dehydrated. You need water. Go drink a ton of water. And if you still feel like you need the coffee, then drink the coffee. Okay?
Okay. And is there a key nugget you shared that folks really dig? They quote it back to you often?
I always say no one knows what they're doing.
Yes,
People love it.
On the microphone. Mm-hmm.
Some people get really upset. They're like, don't say that, doctors know what they're doing. And I'm like, of course they know what they're doing. Of course professionals know how to do their craft. But when you really zoom out, everybody's winging it. Everybody's making it up as they go along. Nobody predicted COVID. Like nobody knows what tomorrow brings. Economists are wrong all the time.
Yeah.
Everything is figure outable.
The tech bros hype their things, and most of them don't do the vision they portray. All these TV shows get canceled. Well, shouldn't the execs know what shows are going to be a hit? No, they can't do it. No.
They do not know. I know from experience.
And if folks want to learn more, get in touch. Where'd you point them?
Yes, follow me on Instagram at AdviceWithErin. You can sign up for my newsletter, hyperhelpful.com, which is a fun weekly newsletter that I write to supercharge your career. Of course, I have my book, The Secret Language of Work, and I have a new app out called Stupid Fish, which is extremely helpful. We have about 30 to 40, maybe even 50,000 users actually today in our first week. So yeah, definitely go download Stupid Fish.
All right. And your final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
Find the job that you enjoy doing. It's much, much easier to work hard at something when you're having fun. I think people who are having fun always tend to win in the end. So find the job that you're the best fit for. Naturally, it's out there. I know it is. There are new jobs being invented every single day. 60% of the jobs people have today didn't exist 80 years ago. So go find your best fit.
Beautiful. Erin, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
I love so much of what Erin has to say about talking to yourself first and doing so like a best friend. And if you've never done this before, it really can feel weird and awkward and silly and like childish or off, but wow, it is so soothing. And I encourage, if you're feeling into that weirdness, that awkwardness, to try to push through it. Have a real friendly, kind, heart-to-heart best friend chat with yourself. And you may discover, this is definitely a practice worth repeating. Great stuff from Erin. If you want to check out the show notes or the transcript or the links to items that we've referenced, please drop on by awesomeatyourjob.com/EP1159. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.